I refused to date my friend because of his toxic family. I, 30F, have this close friend from college who I will call Marlon, 31M. We went to college together, graduated together, and we still hang out on our lunch breaks as our office buildings are just a 5-minute walk away from each other. I have a federal government job and he works for an investment firm. Back in October last year, I allowed Marlon to move in with me after his girlfriend Paige, 29F, broke up with him and kicked him out of her home. Paige is a Jewish, openly bisexual, liberal, tattoo artist who owns her own tattoo parlor, with her own body being beautifully covered in tattoos and jet black hair. Unlike Marlon though, asserts herself, is able to stand up for herself and is argumentative at times. A little backstory and why they broke up. Marlon comes from a traditional, evangelical family from Mississippi. His family moved here to the Bay Area sometime in 2020, during the pandemic so they can be closer to him, or more specifically so they can get him to better support them. Marlon's mom is on welfare, her dad is on Social Security and Marlon's brother Ryan, 35M, is unemployed, relying on Marlon and his parents to support them. Marlon's parents and brother live in a 2-bedroom apartment while Marlon himself, as mentioned, now lives in my house but previously lived with Paige. Marlon's family is toxic, treating him with little to no respect, constantly criticizing him, while coddling Ryan. They find reasons to gang up on him, criticize him and ridicule him despite the fact Marlon is the only one in their family to have ever gone to college, pays for their rent, pays their groceries, their internet, their shopping expenses, etc. During their relationship, Paige and Marlon had this rule that they won't get involved in each other's family matters, provided it does not directly affect them. Paige has repeatedly expressed her concerns to Marlon about his family and how his family treats him, but she opted not to push the matter any further because of their agreement and the fact at the time, as Marlon's family weren't directly interfering with Paige's life. Paige has also generally tried to avoid contact or communication with Marlon's family as she's sickened with the way they treat him. When she tries to stand up for Marlon, Marlon himself shushes her and tells her off for raising her voice to his parents. Additionally, in one of the few times Paige has actually met his family, she got into a fight with Marlon's parents due to Marlon's mom making snide remarks about her tattoos and demanding that Paige take down the Pride flag, Ukraine flag, and BLM banner from her parlor. Marlon's parents also don't like the fact Paige owns her own home after inheriting it from her grandfather. This is because his parents believe it's emasculating that a woman should own her own home and business. Separately, Marlon also previously once told me how his parents don't like the fact that Paige is Jewish, as they will consider accepting her if she removes all her tattoos, again which covers a lot of her body, stops being Jewish and live the same traditional evangelical life they raised Marlon and Ryan with. They basically wanted Paige to convert and become a tradwife. Marlon did a sucky job at standing up for his ex as Marlon tried to remedy this by sheepishly asking her to try covering up her tattoos and taking down the flags from her parlor as a compromise to keep the peace. She refused to do so and threatened to break up with him if he kept pushing it. Note that, Marlon himself is a genuinely kind, intelligent and supportive person who was there for me during a difficult time in my freshman year. When his family aren't around, he does thrive as very much his own person, but since his family moved here to California and get back in his life, it's like they just sucked the life out of him. Me, Paige and his other friends have also talked to him about this, urging him to cut them off, but he's just so desperate for their approval and validation that he won't listen. He just keeps saying things like, maybe if I try a little harder, or they're going to change soon. After a while, it just becomes pointless to even ask. Things changed when Marlon's family started demanding more money from him due to his mom's credit card debt and shopping habits, as well as the fact Marlon's parents used a lot of the allowance Marlon gave them to travel across the country going to campaign rallies during last year's presidential election. When Marlon wasn't able to give his parents any more money, they then went after Paige. Trying to contact her and demanding that as their son's girlfriend, she had to pitch in to support them. Paige just tried to ignore them at first, but things reached a breaking point when Marlon's mother and his brother Ryan came into her parlor, demanding she give them money. According to Paige, they believe that as she's his girlfriend, whatever is hers is also Marlon's and whatever is Marlon's is theirs, with Marlon's mom screaming that they need money to pay her debts. Paige then called 911 when Ryan jumped the counter and started trying to pry open the cash register. However, as she was on the phone, Marlon's mom punched Paige in the face and started trying to grab the phone from her. Apparently, the barber, who's friends with Paige, across the street saw the commotion that was happening in Paige's parlor, so the barber and 2 of his patrons came over to try and help her. The barber and his friends managed to subdue Ryan, and Paige finished her call with 911, as Marlon's mom started screaming at them, calling the barber, who was pinning down Ryan, the N-word and calling Paige a Jewish crack wh. Marlon's mom and brother were arrested, with Paige telling officers that she was pressing charges as Ryan did just try to rob her place, and Marlon's mom beating Paige did cause her to have a bleeding lip and mild concussion. As for my personal relationship with Paige, we're just acquaintances. We met a couple of times at social events including Marlon, and do have each other on both Facebook and Instagram, but that's about it. After Marlon talked about their breakup, just out of curiosity, I did message Paige and ask for her side of the story as well. she asked me to meet up with her at this tea house in Union Square and told me what happened, basically filling in what Marlon left out. Paige went on to tell me that after she pressed charges and moved to file a restraining order against Marlon's family, Marlon practically started begging her to withdraw her statement, withdraw the restraining order, tell the police she made it all up, despite the fact there was security camera footage which she gave to police, and to just make peace, as he didn't want to lose his family. Paige said that Marlon didn't even ask if she was okay or apologize for their actions. Because of this, Paige broke up with Marlon right then and there. Marlon did beg her to not leave him, but Paige reminded him that he consistently kept picking his family over her, he's repeatedly failed to support her, and that she cannot safely be in his life if his family are in his. I thanked Paige for sharing her side of the story and apologized for his actions, to which she assured me none of this was my fault. However, before Paige left, as I did take in Marlon to let him move in with me, Paige then took my hand and warned me to keep my distance from his family and warned me of Marlon's mom's weird obsession with having grandchildren. When I got back to my house, as by this time, he was already staying with me, I admittedly snapped at Marlon, demanding that he apologize to Paige for not supporting her and to stop trying to beg her to get back with him, which he eventually did a couple months later. I then talked to Marlon about trying to at least set boundaries with his family, as he won't cut them off completely, pointed out that he earns more than I do, but yet, he can barely support himself, as he's basically supporting 3 adults and paying for their debts, their rent, their groceries, and legal bills on his income alone, and he's lost not only a couple of other friendships but even his girlfriend of 3 years, Paige, because of his relationship with them. He seems to have gotten it but is still having trouble setting boundaries, and yes, he's still paying their debts and bills. In case you were wondering, I live in my childhood/family 4-bedroom home which they bought in the 90s. My parents moved up to Seattle 2 years ago, allowing me to live here provided I'm able to take care of the house expenses myself. Fast forward to today, it's been 7 months since Paige broke up with Marlon. He is still living with me, we're still friends, but despite that I'm also requiring him to contribute to household expenses like groceries and contributing to the water bill as he is living with me. A couple nights ago, I was in my living room watching Netflix when Marlon asked me if I'd be willing to go out with him on like an actual date. Back in college, we did on a few occasions talk about the possibility of dating, as in cases where his family is out of the picture. He is a genuinely nice guy and we do spend a lot of time with each other, but nothing came out of it at the time. I then paused the movie to have a serious talk with Marlon, bluntly telling him that if it were just him, by himself, I would be open to it, as when his family is out of the picture, he is a genuinely nice guy and reliably supportive. However, I did point out how almost all of his salary goes to supporting 3 unemployed adults, his family, and I reminded him what happened with Paige. That said, I asked that if we did get together, get married and have kids, how would he support our family while supporting his parents and brother? Would he set boundaries with his parents? Because, previously, when Paige and I did urge him to set boundaries with his family, he failed. And lastly, I asked him if we were together, would his parents expect me to support them as well? Additionally, I'm mixed race, as my mom is white and my dad is Indian, and Catholic, albeit not very religious. That said, me being non-white may be a problem for them and I don't share a lot of their views. Marlon just said things along the lines of he would do his best to try to balance things, and he'd only expect me to occasionally help out his parents as a compromise to keep the peace. He also tried reassuring me by saying they wouldn't mind me not being white provided I agree to live by their rules, at least when they're around. Taking a deep breath, I sighed and I told him that unless he fully goes no contact with his parents, not only won't I date him but that any future relationship he has will be doomed to fail due to how overly involved they are in his life. I then got up and went to bed, with the 2 of us not talking about his parents or the 2 of us dating since that night. Additional information and mini update. For clarification, no, I never intended to realistically plan to date or enter a romantic relationship with Marlon. He and I did talk about it yesterday, and we agreed that while he is attracted to me, he also doesn't think it'd be a good idea for us to date, mainly because of my skin color and that being a problem for his mom. Apparently, he briefly mentioned the possibility of us date to his mom, who immediately shot it down because I was too brown for her. One of the very few times that racism actually worked in my favor, I guess. Also, Marlon is still missing Paige and he told me that he's been so thinking about trying to get back with her. I reminded him that not only should he leave Paige alone but that given his situation, unless he gets serious help first and cuts his parents out of his life, getting into another relationship would be the worst possible thing he can do. Lastly, yes, Marlon and I do have a written month-to-month lease. He does pay me rent monthly, albeit a small amount compared to other properties in the market, and if I were to cancel its renewal, I'd need to give him 30 days notice. I, along with a couple of our other mutual friends, have been urging him to find his own place and try to at least do things for himself, hoping that it'd at least start giving him the confidence to start breaking away from his parents. But Update 1. This is a follow-up to my original story from last month and I'm not sure where to begin because of how messed up this has all been. I should probably rewind and explain how things got to this point. So, after Marlon's ex Paige, 29F, broke up with him back in October last year, Paige and I have actually started talking. We have become friends and have started going to the gym together. Paige has also recently started dating a guy from our gym who I'll call Virgil, 33M. Turns out Paige and Virgil happen to have gone to the same high school, although a few years apart. In the 7 months since Paige broke up with Marlon, 31M, he's been slaving away trying to support his freeloading family. He's basically been a wreck without Paige, coupled with the constant belittling he gets from his family, specifically about him not earning enough. He also went on to say that he missed Paige supporting and comforting him, which she'd usually do every time he had a negative interaction with his family. Despite me and our friend group trying to encourage Marlon to just move on from her, Marlon has kept wanting to talk to Paige to try and get her to come back to him. Throughout the 7 months they've been separated, Marlon has tried coming over to Paige's home and parlor to try and talk to her, but she kept shutting him down, and Marlon stopped doing that, at least up until recently, after Paige threatened to call the police and get a restraining order against him if he showed up to her place one more time unsolicited. Marlon has also complained about not being able to support his family's increasing financial demands, debts, medical bills, and shopping habits. Additionally, Marlon's mom has been badgering him and his brother about her wanting to have grandkids. That said, as some of you have commented in my previous post, yeah, I'm pretty convinced that one reason Marlon wants Paige back, or to a lesser extent, be with me, is because he needs someone to help him support his family as well as to serve a buffer between him and them, as well as being like an emotional support person for Marlon himself. In late March, Marlon found out that Paige had a new boyfriend as she's dating Virgil, causing Marlon to panic. He went on a rant saying that he doesn't want to lose Paige, and I reminded him that she already broke up with him, so he and her are done now. Despite this, Marlon did try texting, calling, and messaging Paige repeatedly, even creating new accounts to do so, as he just wants to talk to her and that he believes they can still talk things out, but I told him to stop trying to contact her. I even showed him a video message Paige sent me to show to him in which she explicitly told him to stop contacting her. Fast forward to Saturday, May 17th, I took time off work and was away from home as I went on a date with this guy I met online who I'll call Jack, 55M, as he took me to his cabin up in the mountains for a week. While there, I received a notification that someone was at the door. It was Marlon's parents demanding to speak to Marlon. I'm guessing Marlon was away from home at the time because he clearly didn't answer, so I told them through the doorbell camera that Marlon was probably at work or something and asked what they wanted. Marlon's parents basically went on this rant about how disappointed they are in their son for not earning enough to provide for them, as well as them needing more money to pay for Marlon's mom's legal bills, gambling addiction, and medical bills. Marlon's dad also mentioned that he needs Marlon to sign onto and pay for a Denali pickup truck he wants to buy, as the truck Marlon's dad bought himself just got repoed. Marlon's mom then asked if I was dating or sleeping with Marlon. I told her no, that there is nothing is happening between me and him. Plus I also mentioned to her that Marlon told me that she didn't want me dating her son because I am too brown for her liking, so that shouldn't be a problem anyway. Marlon's mom then responded, saying that at this point, due to her age and ailing health, she just wants to have grandkids, even if they are mixed race. I caught my breath and just reminded her that I'm just Marlon's friend and legally speaking, I am his landlord, so that's it. She then said that, if Marlon and I do have sex, and if I got pregnant, she wants to name our baby, then they left. I was speechless but also felt weirdly sick from that. On Friday afternoon, as Jack and I were leaving, and I turned it back on, had to conserve battery as I didn't bring a charger and wanted to avoid distractions, to find multiple missed calls and messages from Marlon and Tiffany, 30F. Jack dropped me off home, and as I got inside my house, I found Marlon's room completely thrashed, as well as the living room to a lesser extent, and him just sitting there on the couch, looking more miserable than before. I asked what happened, and basically his parents came back over to my place. Marlon opened the door for them and they basically berated him again for not earning enough money to pay for their medical bills, debts, etc. This basically ended in Marlon agreeing to take out a loan to help finance his family, as well as Marlon and his dad going to a dealership for him to sign on to a truck Marlon's dad wanted. When Marlon got home, got so frustrated that he started smashing up the rooms. I then called back Tiffany, who's a close friend of me, Paige and Marlon, and asked her to come over. Tiffany and I then talked to Marlon, comforting him but also urging him again to cut off his parents. Tiffany pointed out that before Marlon's parents came here, Marlon was happy, confident, had a happy and stable relationship with Paige, was doing well at his job, but now he's just a mess. I then also told Marlon about the doorbell conversation I had with his mom, and how his parents are now indirectly starting to affect me as well. Marlon apologized and said he'll try to take care of it. Tiffany, who does come from a wealthy family, did offer to pay for Marlon to go to therapy, but Marlon refused, with him saying that he probably just needs to try something else to win over his parents, with Marlon still justifying their action by saying they're misunderstood. I was going to point out that his family seems to have no sense of boundaries, lack basic human decency, and have no self-control, but at this point, trying to tell him this right now seemed pointless. Tiffany and I then cleaned up the mess in the living room, while Marlon cleaned up his room. Later last night, I spoke with Tiffany and Paige on what we can do. Paige recommended something about trying to reach out to his other relatives who may be willing to support him. I'm leaning towards evicting Marlon from my family home, but I don't want to do that just yet until we could find somewhere for him to stay. I'll post an update if anything significant changes. Paige's side of the story. Hi there. So, I've come across the stories posted by my friend user Ashima N2025, F30. She wrote about my relationship with my ex, Marlon, M31, how she took him in after I kicked him out, and just wanted to say that in her story, I, F29, am the aforementioned Paige. I spoke with Ashima about it and assured her I'm fine with her telling this story. However, after reading her posts and many of your comments, I feel I just need to maybe shed a little light on what the relationship with me and Marlon was like. This is not much of an update, per se, as the only real new developments from what Ashima mentioned in her last post are that she has given Marlon 30 days to move out. Marlon's mom, Sylvia, F68, got him fired from his job, and Marlon has been increasingly desperate in trying to keep his life together. This is really just more for context to what Ashima has already mentioned and for me to tell my side of the story, so if you haven't already done so, please read her posts before reading mine. Also, as I feel Ashima in her previous posts already did a pretty good job in covering the situation we're in, I'm going to try and avoid repeating parts she's already mentioned. I am originally from New Jersey but moved here to California in late October 2021 after my grandpa passed away from COVID the year before, thus inheriting his house here in Oakland. I didn't really know anyone here, but about a week after moving into my new home, is when I met Marlon. We met at a grocery store that I would frequent, and we got to chatting after I commented that I liked the Linkin Park shirt he was wearing. He had scruffy hair, stuttered a bit, and to me he came across as this quirky and kinda awkward type of guy, but I personally found it cute, so after running into him and chatting with him a few times, I took out a Sharpie and wrote my number on his arm, telling him to call or text me if he ever wants to chat or meet up outside of Safeway. For about 2 weeks, Marlon and I would text and call back and forth almost every day. With that in mind, on the second week, while we were talking on the phone, with me talking about how I grew up watching Star Trek and I just asking him if he wanted to go out with me to the Chabot Space and Science Center, which will reopen on November later that week, to which Marlon eagerly said yes to. We went out on our first date on Saturday, November 13th to the Chabot Space and Science Center. I liked that he was smart, engaging, quirky, and just a delight to be around at the time. After that, since he took a cab there, for dinner, I then drove us to this Chinese restaurant near the tattoo shop I worked at. I would later buy it off of the previous owner when he retired, and told him of how on Christmas Eve, while Christian families may serve up ham in their homes, it was a thing for my family and other Jewish families to go out to Chinese restaurants instead. Our first date went really well, so we kept seeing each other. In the 3 years we were dating, I told him everything about myself, my family, and my family history. I told him of how I'm of Czech Jewish descent on my dad's side and Sephardic Jewish on my mom's side. I told him of how my paternal great-grandpa was the only member of his family to have survived Auschwitz, and how the trauma of him losing his entire family caused him to instill in us the value of family and staying close to each other. I told him of how my mom was originally from Portugal but emigrated here to the States in the 1970s to be closer to her family here, which is why I have dual US and Portuguese citizenship, etc. I also opened up to Marlon about how years ago, I was kidnapped, RA'd and tortured, causing me to develop PTSD and develop a DR*G addiction, which took me years and treatment to deal with. This was something only very few people know about. My own family doesn't know the full extent of what happened, but I told Marlon everything, all of which was in confidence. I made Marlon promise not to share what I told him to anybody. Marlon, however, was generally very reluctant to talk about his family, which I respected, but eventually he did talk about how he grew up in a very conservative and strict household, how his family scoffs at the college educated, and how he is the primary provider for his family, with Marlon saying that he does what he can to earn his parents' love. I told him that love is not earned, but rather it's unconditional and based on mutual support for each other. His immediate family were very toxic. His brother, Ryan, M35, bullies Marlon and his parents encouraged it. They mocked Marlon for going to college, but now his parents are using him as a meal ticket as well as intending for him to be a long-term financial support system for Ryan. Marlon, however, does have an aunt and uncle who I will call Grace, the older sister of Sylvia, and Todd, who were actually genuinely nice people and have shown him love and compassion. He even recalled of how his Aunt Grace, F72, would oftentimes defend Marlon whenever Sylvia started berating him during family gatherings. When Grace did this, Sylvia would often back down, according to Marlon, only for Sylvia to take out her anger on Marlon later. Anyway, in the 3 years we've been dating, Marlon and I have traveled back to the East Coast 3 times to spend the holidays with my family. This was for Passover in 2022 and 2024, as well as Hanukkah in 2023. To Marlon, the way my family and I interacted with each other was like a culture shock. My sister Noah, F26, and I could have disagreements, talk back to and even mildly argue with our parents over certain things, and it not being that big of an issue, how we could just candidly talk about things with each other, our parents respecting our personal space and privacy, etc. Additionally, my parents made it a point to make Marlon feel welcome. My parents were super supportive of us, and for Hanukkah, my mom even got Marlon a present. All of this, my family being able to talk candidly and even have disagreements with each other in a healthy manner, as debates are something my dad has generally encouraged as it promoted critical thinking skills. Additionally, our parents being supportive of my sister and I, our parents not trying to guilt trip us or play favoritism, just felt strange and foreign to him. For Marlon, he described my family dynamic as being the type of family dynamic he'd only see on TV or in movies. He always assumed it was just fake or for show, as based on his experiences, especially with his own family and to a lesser extent, seeing how his extended family interacted with each other, to him dysfunction was normal. Now from reading the comments on Ashima's posts, quite a few of you did comment and ask why I stayed with Marlon for as long as I did. This is the part where I explain that. For the first 2 years of us dating, back when Marlon's parents weren't really all that involved in our relationship, things were actually really good. I enjoyed spending time with Marlon. He was kind, compassionate, great at listening, engaging, a bit weird in a cute kind of way. My relationship with Marlon when it was just the two of us was great. The first time I actually met Marlon's family was on New Year's Eve in 2022. Marlon told me they wanted to spend New Year's in a proper house and they wanted to know if I'd be willing to host them, so I did. Also, as a buffer, I also invited my friends Tiffany, F30, Luna, F29, and my cousin Jacob, M33, as well as his wife and kids who were also visiting at the time. Right off the bat, Marlon's parents were unpleasant people. When I introduced myself, upon them learning that I owned my own home and had my own income, Marlon's parents seemed genuinely offended by that. In fact, quite a few things at my home offended them. They didn't like the fact Jacob's kids were just in the living room watching Glee, which Marlon's mom loudly complained that it was woke trash, which she believes promotes homosexuality. She also didn't like the fact she saw my old Bernie 2016 t-shirt just laying on my couch with Marlon's mom calling Bernie Sanders a woke, Jewish socialist. I playfully responded by saying so am I, as again, I grew up in an environment where I was encouraged to talk back, which Sylvia seemed offended by. During the dinner, Marlon's dad and brother Ryan talked about how Marlon is a disappointment, with Ryan calling Marlon a loser. This caused an awkward silence in the dining room, so I shot back by rhetorically asking Ryan, so, what do you do for a living, and, tell me Ryan, where did you go to college again? This caused Ryan to shut up and stare at me angrily. I doubled down by bluntly pointing out to Ryan and Marlon's dad that Marlon is not only the only one in his family who's been to college, but that he's the only one among them who has a job, at the time, and pointed out that he's basically paying for their everything, so they're not exactly in a position to talk down to him. Sylvia then snapped, incoherently screaming at me, and I pissed her off even more by just laughing at her, which I'm guessing pissed her off even more. After a little more back and forth, Marlon's family then stormed off even before we could get to the New Year's countdown. After the party, when everyone else went home, Marlon essentially told me off for talking back to and arguing with his parents like that. Sometime after they left, while the rest of us were in the living room celebrating New Year's, Marlon actually stepped away from the party to take a phone call from his mom, who berated him because I stood up for him. I reminded Marlon that I'm his girlfriend, so yes, I did stand up for him and defend him the same way I expect him to defend me if it came down to it. We got into an argument because of that and we ended up sleeping in separate rooms. He later apologized for telling me off, saying that he did appreciate as nobody but his Aunt Grace has ever done that for him, but he also went on to say that his mom was wanting me to apologize to them, which I refused. Admittedly, this was a massive red flag I ignored. This New Year's Eve dinner did cause this lingering issue in the back of my head, which admittedly, I should have addressed more firmly, and that was the fact most of Marlon's income was going towards supporting his parents and older brother. 3 adults who were ridiculously ungrateful and entitled, yet dependent on Marlon. They would mock and ridicule Marlon while making demands of him, and honestly it pained me to see this. We did talk about it for a while, but I agreed to not interfere or weigh in on his family matters so long as their behavior does not affect me or our relationship. I did however also suggest that he try to at least gradually reduce his support for them. I did however try to at least get him to question and sow doubt in his decision to support his family by asking him things like, has your parents ever thanked you? What do you gain from spending time with them? Do they make you happy? And, if we do eventually get married and have kids, do you really think you'd still be able to support them as well as us? Marlon can never really give a straight answer to any of these questions. He kept trying to shut these questions out of his mind, and he'd often use the justification, because they're family, as his reason to keep supporting his parents and brother. After a while, he also asked me to stop asking him these kinds of questions, so I did. Things started to go downhill at around July 2023 when Marlon's family started becoming more involved in Marlon's lives, with Sylvia trying to micromanage his life and have been pressuring him to either get a higher paying job or to get a raise. This has resulted in Marlon having near daily phone conversations with his parents, with him pretty much flinching every time the phone rings, Marlon being told to come over to their apartment so that they could berate him again, and a few times even come over to my house to talk down to him here. Also, just wanted to point out, after the New Year's Eve event, I was never the one who opened the door for Marlon's family, as on the 2 times since the party that they've come over to my place, it's been Marlon who answered the door and let them in. Admittedly, after the party, I should have just told Marlon that his parents weren't allowed into my home, period. So, in the occasions where they did drive over to my place to talk down to and berate Marlon, or where they do so in a place where I was also present, there would be this pattern in which I would jump to Marlon's defense, talk back to his parents, argue with them only for Marlon to defend them as I was trying to defend him. This resulted in the three of them coming at me as well just for trying to defend Marlon. Once his parents left, I then get into fights with Marlon over why he's defending them while I'm trying to defend him. He'd say he's trying to keep the peace and keep everyone happy, and how he's just trying to earn their respect. This was also when Marlon told me that his parents didn't like the fact I was Jewish, that I had tattoos on my body, or the fact that I had an LGBTQ flag, Ukraine flag, BLM banner, yellow ribbon banner, etc. in my shop. He then tried to get me to compromise with his parents by trying to tell me to take down the flags and banners in my shop, cover up my tattoos, and at least tell his mom that I'm willing to convert. After that, I angrily told Marlon that I don't want his parents in my house ever again. If they come over again, I will get the cops involved, and I threatened to break up with him, as at this point, I felt he was wanting me to change for his parents' approval. Marlon then tried to backtrack, begged me not to leave him and promising to set boundaries with his parents, which he never did. Again, another failing on my part, as I should have just broken up with him at this point. Throughout the next few months, I'd also find Marlon either crying, talking down to himself, telling himself that he needs to try harder, and just being a mess. In turn, I'd find myself trying to comfort and console Marlon, being there for him, holding him when he's having a panic attack, etc. I do believe in being there to emotionally support and care for the ones you love, which is why I did this, which I don't regret, as I would do that for any of my loved ones or people I care about. However, I understand now it needs to also be reciprocal. Over the next few months, I was basically no contact with Marlon's family, but from out of the blue, Marlon's mom Sylvia started trying to call and message me, making demands that I support them as well. With Sylvia's calls and messages basically conveying that as Marlon's future wife I needed to pitch in and support them as well, let them live in my house, and Sylvia basically stating that as Marlon is the man of the house, I need to obey him, in my ing house, and let him control my finances, but also that he still has an obligation to support them using my money. I tried ignoring her or just being blatantly rude by hanging up on her mid-rant, but when I did this, she then started making more insane demands. Sylvia then started asking if me and Marlon were trying to have kids, how she wants to name any child me and Marlon have, once messaging me to find a girlfriend for Ryan, etc. All of this was stressing me out, so I did also try to bring this up with Marlon, but when I did, he wouldn't take it seriously, or he tried to dismiss it, and on a couple of occasions, he even in a coy manner asked me to just consider it. There was basically no point in talking to Marlon about this at this point, so I just flatly told him to tell his family to stop contacting me. This clearly didn't work though, as finally on October last year, Sylvia and Ryan came to my shop to demand that I financially support them. I told Sylvia that she is not my responsibility. Marlon may want to waste his money on them, but I don't. But none of this was getting through to Sylvia, as she just went on and on about her debts, credit cards, etc. While Sylvia was ranting, I turned to see Ryan having climbed over the counter and trying to figure out how to open the cash register. This was all too much for me, so I just pulled out my phone and called 911. While I was on the phone with the operator, I suddenly felt a punch to the side of my face, followed by being pushed down onto some shelves, knocking me over. I was dazed for like 5 seconds before realizing Sylvia was scratching at my face and hands as she was trying to grab my phone. Doug, M53, who is a barber and friend from across the road, then came in along with a couple of his patrons to help me, with one of Doug's patrons pulling Sylvia off of me while Doug pinned down Ryan. Another passersby and one of my customers also happened to come in and helped in restraining Sylvia and Ryan. When I finished the 911 call, Sylvia was screaming at Doug and his friends, calling them the N-word, with Marlon's mom calling me a crack W********E and J******. The police arrived, I showed the security cam footage, they arrested Ryan and Sylvia, and I was taken to hospital after the assault. I did press charges, which is why Ryan is now in jail and Sylvia was forced to pay a fine. Ryan was also charged with assault, as used a wallet chain in his pocket as well as a chair to assault Doug and one of the passers-by who came to help. When Marlon got home later that evening, he came in shouting at me for calling the cops, complaining that he now has to pay their legal bills and demanding that I withdraw my statement and say that I made it all up, ignoring the fact that I showed the police the security camera footage, that there were multiple other witnesses, and the fact that Ryan assaulted 2 other people. I had a bleeding lip, scratches on my neck, a concussion, and bruising on my face. Also, just wanted to correct a minor detail from Ashima's first story. Marlon only started demanding that I drop the restraining order against his family after I broke up with Marlon. I stared at Marlon in silence for a few seconds and just simply said, "You didn't even ask if I was okay," to which Marlon immediately responded by saying, "Why the hell do I care if?" To which he abruptly stopped and immediately tried to backtrack, so I told him to just stop and to not bother. There was another silence in the room, so I told Marlon, "Your mom called me a J******Kai and a crack W******E. How does she know about that?" He was silent, so I got up and screamed at him, "How the F*** K does she know that?" To which Marlon admitted that he told his mom of what happened to me as she wanted dirt on me. I then told Marlon that I was done with him. I can't deal with his family. I don't feel safe around his family. He broke my trust. It's killing me to watch Marlon humiliate himself to not only cater to but entertain his family who will never reciprocate his love for them. But more than all that, I can't be with someone who can't be there for me and who I can't trust. I can't be with someone who I can't see a healthy future with. After I said that and started tearing up as I told him that I was breaking up with him because I can't do this and it hurts too much to be with him. Marlon then tried to backtrack again, begging me not to break up with him, with Marlon saying things like, "We can talk about this, and we can make it work if we just talk." But when Marlon said, "I want to keep both my family happy and you, so if we," I shouted back at Marlon, "I haven't been happy with you in the last 15 months. Marlon then asked, "Can you just pretend you're happy?" I responded to that by asking him, "Is that what you do with your parents, pretend you're happy with them?" Marlon had no response to that. I then caught my breath and composed myself enough to tell Marlon to pack his and that he has 4 days to get the F*** out of my house, adding that when I come back I don't want to see Marlon or his stuff still in my home. I then went to my bedroom, packed my stuff and my laptop into a backpack and went over to Tiffany's place asking her and her husband if I can stay with her for a couple days as Marlon moved out of my house, to which they graciously agreed. Throughout the night, Marlon did spam me with calls, messages, and texts, asking me to just talk about it. I just replied with 2 messages, one by text and one by Facebook, telling him that if he's still in my house by Wednesday, I'm calling the cops and getting a restraining order against him too. On Monday, I received a call from Ashima who told me that she reluctantly agreed to let Marlon move in with her, and we discussed details such as when he's moving out, things he may have in my house, as well as me agreeing to forward any of Marlon's mail or packages directly to her place. It was a short phone call. On Wednesday, I asked Tiffany's husband Christian, M35, if he can drive me over to my place, as I didn't want to go back there alone just in case Marlon or his family were there. When we got back to my place, Marlon's car as well as his stuff in my house were gone. Christian also helped me change the locks of my house while he was there. A few days after Marlon moved in with Ashima, she contacted me asking if we could talk. We met up for drinks and I told her most of the situation of what happened. I also warned her to set boundaries with Marlon and to definitely keep his family away from her for her own safety. Also, in case you were wondering, yeah, I'm doing okay now. In the almost 8 months since I broke up with Marlon, he for up until March of this year has tried calling me, messaging me from different accounts, and he even dropped by my house and shop about 4 times wanting to talk. I usually told him to go away or simply ignore him, and after he goes off on what I'm guessing was a rehearsed speech which I kinda tuned out, he'd just leave. Ashima and Tiffany has also promised to help keep Marlon and especially his family away from me, considering that I have a restraining order against his family. On a separate note, I am now dating a guy named Virgil, M33. We went to the same high school together, but he was a few years ahead of me, and we reconnected back in June last year when I found out he moved here to California and went to the same gym as me. He told me he moved here work, so we started meeting, met up for coffee, catching up and me showing him around, but just as friends since I was still with Marlon at the time. We didn't start dating until March this year. I haven't mentioned this to Ashima yet, but my last run-in with Marlon was a couple weeks after Virgil and I started dating. Virgil was driving me back to my place, and as we pulled up into my driveway, I saw Marlon sitting on my front porch. I exited his car and asked Marlon what he was doing at my place. He then told me that the house key I gave him a couple years ago doesn't work anymore. Marlon then tried talking to me, but he was disjointed in what he was trying to tell me, jumping between, "I just want to talk," to, "How could you do this to us," asking for a second chance, and Marlon saying that he could forgive me for seeing another man if I just gave him a second chance. Virgil then told Marlon to back up as Marlon ignored him, and just kept shouting at me things like telling me how his mom still follows me on Instagram, I'm guessing she created another account just to stalk me, but and how his mom doesn't approve of me dating a black guy. Virgil is mixed race as his mom is white, his dad is black, so just I cut off Marlon, telling that I never cared about what his mom thinks, we're not dating anymore, and that he has to leave. The whole time, I was also trying to hold Virgil back, staying between Marlon and him as I didn't want them fighting. I also told Virgil just to ignore Marlon and that I'll explain things to him when we get inside. As Virgil and I were entering my house, Marlon then frantically started screaming at me, telling me that I'm still his girlfriend and that I'm hurting our chances of getting back together, etc. Marlon then turned to Virgil and asked him, "Do you know she's a Dr*G and a criminal?" At this, I then turned around, rushed towards Marlon and threw him against the column as Marlon tried explaining that he just said that to get my attention and just wanted to talk. I composed myself and told Marlon that if he ever comes to my house or business again uninvited, I will take him to court, get a restraining order, and tell his boss that he's been using his sick days to stalk me, as well as having my lawyer convey that fact to his employer so that they actually take it seriously. I then reminded Marlon that if he loses his job, he won't be able to support his parents. I then calmed down, told Marlon that I still think he needs to cut off contact with his parents, reminding him that his mom and brother ruined his relationship with me, and that he won't have a life unless he cuts them off. However, I also told Marlon that I want him to be happy, but it won't be with me. Once inside my house and after Marlon left, I explained this whole situation to Virgil. We talked about it. He said he still wants to be with me, which I appreciate, and that, if necessary, I will get a restraining order, but I don't really want to go to court any more than I have to. I stayed with Marlon for as long as I did, stayed with him for the last 13 to 15 months in which I was no longer happy being in that relationship in what I guess was a baseless hope that things would get better and the memory of how good the first 2 years of the relationship were. Before I met Marlon's family, before they interfered in our relationship, interfered in my life, things were good, but I know now that Marlon from 2021 is not the same Marlon today in 2025. If I had a magic wand, would love nothing more but to go back to the late 1990s and get CPS to take Marlon away from his parents so at least, Marlon could grow up in a healthier home, even if it is in foster care, but I know that's as fanciful as the idea of Marlon's parents ever actually loving or appreciating him. Marlon believes he's being noble and selfless by caring for his ungrateful family. I cannot reason with that. I don't know how to. Lastly, as for why I haven't yet pursued a restraining order against Marlon yet, it is because up until a couple of days ago, Marlon still had a job, and I knew that if I took Marlon himself to court and or pursued a restraining order against him too, it could get him fired, and the stress of all this could cause him to spiral even further. Despite everything he's done and that has happened, I still don't want to cause harm to him if I could avoid doing so, plus he's never assaulted me or threatened me yet. I just want him out of my life, but without making his any more difficult. Sorry if my story seems a little disjointed. I spent all night trying to write it, am tired, and my thoughts and memories are kinda all over the place right now.